Hello, everyone, and welcome to Black Mental Health Matters. This is a radio program that airs every Sunday at 1 p.m. on heat981fm.com in Boston, Massachusetts. And in today's show, I'm going to be speaking with Dr. Portia Lee, who's a certified holistic health practitioner, about her journey to naturopathy and her holistic practice, Day 7 Wellness Center. I'm a psychiatrist in Boston, and I like talking to people about mental health. And I want you to also know that Black mental health matters. So enjoy this show today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Black Mental Health Matters. I'm Dr. CHHP, a psychiatrist practicing here in Massachusetts, and this is a talk show that's about everything related to mental wellness in the Black community. So if you'd like to participate throughout the show, you can give us a call at 617-238-7111. You can also follow the live stream on Facebook. The Facebook page is heat981fm.com. So you can go to that Facebook page, heat981fm.com, and follow the live stream. And guys, today it's all about holistic medicine. So I have a wonderful guest with me here today, Dr. Portia Lee. She's a certified holistic health practitioner. And so I'm going to introduce her, and then I'm going to have her do a little further introduction of herself. So Dr. Portia Lee is a certified holistic health practitioner and author. She focuses on mind, body, spirit, wellness, enlightenment, and personal as well as systemic traumas. She has a book named So I Woke Up, Now What? And that is available for purchase. And her next book is called So I've Been Healed, Now Reclaiming My Power. And that's set to be released this spring. Dr. Lee is a credentialed practitioner in naturopathy, Reiki, emotional freedom therapy, thought field therapy, advanced meditation, yoga, cognitive behavioral therapy, and so much more. And she has a holistic practice called Day 7 Wellness Center, which has a global clientele, and she's spoken on international panels. So welcome to the show, Dr. Portia Lee.
Thank you, Dr. Williams.
So, Dr. Portia, tell us a little bit more about your background and your journey to the practice of naturopathy.
Sure. It has been quite a substantial and uplifting journey for me. I have always been more interested in the natural wellness art overall, or in natural wellness practices overall. My journey actually came to full fruition with an ailment that I was recovering from on my own. I had 2 tumors and some issues within my colon, and stumbled upon naturopathy while I was in pursuit of graduate level education. And through my journey and seeing how well I recovered as a result of my own ailment, I pursued education so that I can help educate and empower and equip people about their own physical recoveries through natural modalities.
Wow. So it's kind of your own personal experience. You said, wow, more people can be helped this way.
Right.
And so your response was to want to share that.
Right. To fully empower people so that, we can become deeply educated about the actual process that natural healing actually occurs within us. So not necessarily just healing a physical ailment or putting a Band-Aid on it, but to understand how our physical manifestations take place from mental, emotional, and physical perspectives as well.
Wow. So tell us a little bit about this philosophy. Tell us about naturopathy and the philosophy of natural healing. Because I know a lot of us, we may have different impressions about what does that mean, but you're a specialist. So tell us a little bit about what that means.
Absolutely. So I'll take an encouragement from traditional Chinese medicine. It is believed that the mind, body, and spirit are one working unit, as opposed to it being, 3 different entities of one. And it is taught in traditional Chinese medicine that there are, let's say you have a mental component, that something is not necessarily functioning at its highest and best in that moment, that will eventually become some sort of a physical ailment. So through practicing and learning completely understanding the emotional body and the way that the body's energy flows work, we're able to address any issues from a physical level down to a mind and emotional level as well. So full mind, body, spirit.
Wow. I noticed you mentioned like understanding how those body flows work. So the idea that it's kind of all one unit, the mind, the body, and the spirit. And I think, thinking about the traditional medicine perspective, the way that we're kind of taught about it is that those things are connected, but not really one. And that the mind, I guess if something is particularly strong enough, then it can affect the body. But otherwise, the physical is very much separate. And that's kind of how it's taught for the most part. So you
That's
have
right.
this separate field of like physical health and mental health, and as a psychiatrist, I'm taught the biological underpinnings, but it's still very much not, it's still very much taught as like connected, but not necessarily one thing.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. So in my own journey to recovery, I was able to make that distinct connection, understanding that my physical ailments that were quite critical during the time frame were the result of something that I had experienced emotionally. So, and I had to go in and do the work to eradicate them both. So,
The funny thing is, as you mentioned that, I remember in the field of psychiatry, but as well as primary care, there was this study that came out called the A study. And when it came out, it was kind of this like revolutionary thing. Oh my gosh, childhood traumas can lead to diabetes and obesity in adulthood and all these physical problems. And it was like, oh, now we have this scientific evidence. And us thinking, this completely makes sense, right?
yeah,
It completely makes sense that if you've had emotional trauma, particularly at young ages, but really at any age, that it's going to have some effect on your physical body. And I would be willing to bet that naturopaths have been saying this for centuries.
that is exactly right. It was Dr. Nadine Burke, who is
Mhm.
now the general. She's a Surgeon General of California now. She's the one that drew in the scientific research for the ACEs study and was able to show, here there are direct correlations and links to emotional and mental wellness to the physical ailments that we're experiencing today. What a breakthrough study that was, though, to really put it out in mainstream.
Yeah, and it put it into language that that would reach more people, because there's a lot of folks that they're skeptical of things that they can't see or they can't study under a microscope in a certain way. And so when you say, okay, here's a scientific study that shows that there's a link, they'll say, okay, let me give this a closer look. But what I find is, you know, primary care is going to be what it is, and it's kind of shaped that way, or complete or medical system. But the answer I found is they'll say, oh, if someone notices maybe there's a link to a mental health issue, they'll say, well, okay, let me just put in a referral for you. I'll just put in a referral for psychiatry. And there's not necessarily, it seems as though naturopathy might be the kind of field where you don't necessarily need to always refer out. You can actually address that unit, the mind, body, spirit unit, in one center. So tell us a little bit about how you address the unit in naturopathy.
I most certainly can. And I do also have a referral system. So there are times where I'll have a client intake and I'll say what you need to see is, a clinical doctor or a psychiatrist. And, I refer from there. My personal process is primarily, so I focus on preliminary care. Now, I do also help with chronic illness, eradication of chronic illness as well. But my process is really kind of a mapping of how you've arrived at who you are today. What makes you who you are. So the way that us naturopaths look at things is when you have a physical ailment of any kind, that is a pain showing you that there's something alarming within your spirit that hasn't necessarily been addressed. So let's use myself as an example. My tumors. my tumors were a result of inner child concerns that I needed to take a look at, or, that I needed to work through and process for myself. And as a result of me stuffing my emotions and pushing through life and not necessarily taking a look at what I needed to heal, my body reacted in a physical way and said, hey, you need to pay attention to this. This is something that you need support around. And that was what really started my journey. And that is typically how I end up seeing a lot of clients. There are some that come before there are any physical manifestations that, they're well and aware, they're physically well, but they're aware that they're emotionally pained, and they come for support in that way. And then there are so many different ways that we can address that. So we can utilize one of the varying therapy modalities that I practice, or we can utilize somewhat of a physical therapy. Yoga yoga has been very westernized as we see it in the approach. But yoga is really actually a very spiritual and emotional process. The asanas, which are poses in the yoga practice, are actually created to release, let's say, I'm struggling with inner child work, and there's something about that keeps coming up and keeps showing itself in my life repetitively. There are poses that I can do to help to release that. So I do know that, and I will work on that with my clients as well. And then there are other things like emotional freedom therapy, which is EFT tapping, which is becoming wildly popular as people are starting to learn more about it. But that connects with your acupressure points throughout your body and allows you to create or to process acupressure, working with a practitioner that will help you release the stored emotion.
Oh, okay. So it's kind of like a physical intervention, but also a sensory intervention to help to address the fact that there are these kind of experiences as well as emotions that are in your body.
That was the perfect description. Yes. Yeah.
And so tell me a little bit more about the kinds of conditions, the kinds of things that people might come to you for.
So I get the gambit. I get I have stage 4 cancer, and willing to try anything in order to recover. I am depressed. I don't like the state of the world right now. So, I need some assistance with that. I am overwhelmed with joy. I'm in a very, very good space, and I want to learn more about, what my resources are. I get grief. I don't know what's wrong with me. I get anxiety. So it's the full gambit.
And then tell me a little bit about Day 7 Wellness Center, what it offers.
Yes, so we offer a range of services from mind, body, and spirit. So for the mind, we offer talk therapy and counseling through cognitive behavioral therapy and things of that nature. I do also teach modalities as well. So I teach several, and we can get into those as the interview goes on. However, um, for the mind, so we do things from that perspective. Also meditation. So we also are into the release and detoxification of the mind and the spirit. So we do meditation, we do Reiki, we do massage therapy, and also detox, as I just mentioned. For the spirit, I do also minister, and a lot of the things that I teach, I do teach from the spiritual perspective. So I do teach the science that is accompanied with all of the modalities that I teach as well. But I also blend in the spiritual aspect or the spiritual nature of what we are learning, what I'm teaching, what we're learning, and what we're experiencing in life, and how it's, come to physical manifestation. And then from a body perspective, again, we do massage therapy. We do Reiki that does help physical as well. and emotional freedom therapy and yoga therapy.
Okay. Wow, so it's a wide range of things to offer.
Yes. We did also just add doula services to our practice as well, and those are led by Michelle James.
Okay. So doula services also, which can be incredibly helpful, to folks going through a pregnancy.
That's right.
So tell us a little bit about the training involved in becoming a naturopath, because I imagine that folks listening might be interested in going into this field as well, either going to see someone who specializes and kind of wonders, okay, what are they trained to do, but then also maybe wants to go into the field themselves and I wonder if this is something I can go into. Does it take too long, that sort of thing. So tell us about the path.
Absolutely. I will give you the path that's available today, and then I'll talk to you a little bit about my own path. So the path that's available today, there are a number of schools throughout the United States that do provide the naturopathic doctor process, or that declination of degree. Um, so those schools are actually there are also a couple of medical schools that offer naturopathy as an option as opposed to the medical journey, as an arm of it. Typically, the education is about 4 years, and then you graduate, and receive your degree and move on to, if you'd like to become board certified and licensed. However, in the United States, naturopathy is not recognized in all of the states of the United States. Um, so some people practice with their degree only. In the state of Massachusetts, you do have to be licensed and board certified. And then there are a couple of other states where you do have to be licensed and board certified in order to practice. The licensure and board certification process is just like the medical field. So you do go through a series of testing and things of that nature in order to, pass and in order to be licensed or board certified. Um, I would like to recommend, there is a school here in Amherst, and it is actually run by someone that I've been extraordinarily inspired by, Dr. Paul Hirschu, and it's called the New England School of Naturopathy. So it is here in Massachusetts, in Amherst. I personally did not have the pleasure of going through that program. However, I am very familiar and do follow Dr. Paul Hirschu very closely, and he is on the board of certification, the certification board here in Massachusetts. So he's very well versed and very well respected within the community.
Uh-huh.
So that's somewhat of the short way to go through it. My personal journey, which actually led me to Dr. Paul Hirschu, I went through a series of programs and got my certifications and official certifications and trainings in varying modalities. And I would say that process took me about 11 years from start to finish. I did not realize that the naturopathic schools around the country were opening the way that they were, that provide the full comprehensive naturopathic experience there. And I did end up going through a naturopathic program at the very end of my journey. And when I went for the board certification and licensure, I already had everything that they were requiring, so that was okay. That was just my particular journey, which probably was more beneficial because it helped me create the educational programs that I teach. So
Yeah. So you ended up, I guess you did it the long way.
I did it the long way.
You did it the long way.
Yeah.
Which I guess is okay too. As long as you still kind of, because in some ways you can even start teaching and start utilizing it along the way. So it's, either way, it's fine.
That's right. Yeah.
And so then how long have you been providing care for other people?
So I have been an active practitioner of the healing arts for about 10 years now. Um, and again, that journey began after my own recovery. The very first healing modality, we could consider it that I began practicing with was Reiki. And then as time went on, I began to put other skills and tools within my tool belt. So.
Wow. So if you guys are just joining, you're listening to Black Mental Health Matters. I'm Dr. CHHP Williams, a psychiatrist here in Massachusetts. And we're talking today about holistic mental health care. And my guest today is Dr. Portia Lee. She's a naturopath, a certified holistic health practitioner. And she has a holistic practice called Day 7 Wellness Center. And so if you have any questions or any thoughts to share, you can give us a call at 617-238-7111. That's 617-238-7111. We're also streaming live on Facebook, and that's on the page heat981fm.com. So you can go to that Facebook page, drop a comment or a question. Or if you just want to see us, in addition to hearing us, you can go to Facebook. So let's talk about Day 7 Wellness Center. How did it get the name Day 7 Wellness Center?
So when I was thinking about the modalities that I wanted to incorporate into a general experience with the Day 7 program, I started to think about the overall process. And I realized that through a 7-day journey, that, that was the actual process. And then it linked back to, on the 7th day, he rested. And I said, oh, it's Day 7. It's release, it's freedom, it's, rest, relaxation, it's being whole and complete. And that was where Day 7 came from.
Oh, okay. And tell us about the philosophy of your wellness center and what you're all about there.
So I am a faith-based practice. I do believe in God first and foremost, and I do believe that God put us here with a resource and an answer to everything. I do believe that we serve an all-knowing God. And so I do believe that, we were placed here with resources to help us heal and aid recovery from any scenario we could potentially think of. And again, it was in my pursuit of healing myself that I discovered that these resources were real, that they were valid, and that they do work. And then those resources and practices were validated through, my clientele seeking my assistance, and then seeing the recovery stories from, I've recovered from stage 4 cancer. I'm here cancer free, or I've recovered from this particular disability and can utilize my physical body to the full extent again. And just so, that is really where my base is. Aside from that, though, I really just want to see everyone be well. And I mean, from every perspective, from the small, mundane things, tasks. So, today I posted on my Facebook page about a smear campaign. I want to see people recover from that. I want to see people, recover from grief. I want to see people recover from having chronic illness, and just really be in a place of peace and overall wellness within their soul. So,
wow. Yeah, I imagine that it must be rewarding to see other people benefit the same way that you benefited, to
it's
be
really,
free.
it is rewarding, and it's also very humbling. I feel I am very, I'm very grateful. I'm filled with gratitude to be able to help people take their power back and really empower themselves to be the best them that they can be as a whole person.
Wow. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the specific kind of concepts and services, because I've been looking through your website, and again, just amazed by the number of things that you offer. And I wanted to start with Reiki, which I had heard of before a long time ago, and I had never heard that term before. And someone was saying that they were a practitioner, and I was thinking, what is Reiki? And so, can you explain for our listeners what Reiki is?
Absolutely. So I am a Grandmaster Reiki practitioner. I have a master in 3 different degrees of Reiki. My primary Reiki mentor is RN Patricia Iyer. So Reiki is a way that the practitioner channels the universal energies into the clients. So we are attuned to the energies around us, and understand what those energies are, and like a radio station, the vibration or the dial tone that we need, and that a client needs, excuse me, and we channel those energies through from the universe through us and into our clients. What I tell a lot of my clients is that it's like a massage for your soul. Um, and it does the actual equivalent of, and maybe even goes a little bit deeper, of the experience of having massage therapy as well. So that's essentially what the experience would be like, is like having a massage for your soul. And you can do
So then,
Reiki with anything at any time. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to ask, so is it kind of like almost like channeling like a positive energy?
Absolutely. Yep. So Reiki is based on the principle of unconditional love. So when we receive our attunements, we are receiving pretty much a blessing of unconditional love. It can be also considered a baptism, in a lot of different ways. But the forces that are the key, the life force, going back to traditional Chinese medicine, the key or the life force that we channel is attuned to unconditional love.
And so when people are going through or experiencing Reiki, can they feel that?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So everyone has a different experience. I've had clients that can literally feel the energy, the shift in their system. Then I have others that that have visual experiences, so they might see colors of the rainbow, or they're prompted to see visions of green pastures or lavender or something of that experience. But everyone goes through it a little bit differently. But the overall consensus, I've never, not one time, and I've had hundreds of clients, I have never had a Reiki client say they did not have a good experience during it.
Okay, so there's not kind of this the warning you may have a bad feeling or something.
No, I've never ever received, I've never gotten that feedback, not once in over 10 years that I've been practicing. So,
and so how long would a session last?
they typically last about 45 minutes.
Okay.
I personally will go until I can feel, that the session is done. If it needs to be longer than 45 minutes, I'll go longer. If it needs to be shorter, which doesn't typically happen, but if it does need to be shorter, then I'll do it for a little less.
Okay. And is this something that people would need to do like once a week, or is there a frequency that's recommended?
As a practitioner, us practitioners recommend about every 28 days.
Okay.
However, the Reiki energy, excuse me, does go on for about a year or so. So there are some clients that I see about every year. There are some clients I see quarterly, and then there are a few that I do see about every 28 days.
And so is kind of the goal to increase their energy level, uplift their mood, promote healing, all of the above. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so when you say the energy kind of lasts longer, that's both their feeling, but also their overall wellness.
That's right. Yes.
Okay. Wow. I mean, that's powerful.
Yeah, Reiki is a blessing. I owe a lot of my journey to Reiki. I'm thankful for it.
And so it's something you personally used in your own life and found benefit from.
I do. Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
And so I teach as well because of that. Yes.
So now I wanted to talk about this concept that you talk about, and it's called the emotional body. And I don't know if I'd heard that particular term before. So tell us about the concept of the emotional body.
Okay. So the emotional body is our soul. Now, I am going to say something that I think is there are people that are becoming enlightened around the world right now. However, I have gotten a lot of controversial comments about the statement that not the statement, but the thought process that I'm about to introduce to the overall call. So I just want to preference this with that.
Oh, I think it kind of froze for a little bit.
Can you hear me okay now? No. Can you hear me okay?
I think Dr. Williams is having some technical difficulties on her end.
Okay.
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 All right. So I think, okay. So is your connection back? Are you back?
I'm back. Yes.
Okay. So you may have to start over and explain. Sorry. You're just about to say that you're going to say a controversial comment.
Okay. The emotional body is our soul. It is our spirit. You know, there are many practitioners that are reciting a popular phrase now. We are not a spirit within our body. We are a spirit that has a body. Our soul comprises of a system referred to in traditional Chinese medicine as a chakra system, not just traditional Chinese medicine. In almost every culture you can potentially think of, they recognize the chakra system. That is your emotional body. There are 7 primary chakra systems that link to our emotional or mental or spiritual state of well-being. And those primary chakras are the drivers for our emotional wellness overall. So that essentially is your emotional body. It is your spirit.
Okay. Now, there was another concept that you had written about, and it was this idea of generational healing. And I know I've kind of heard little bits about, generational kind of patterns that can happen. But when you talk about generational healing, what is that, and what kind of service is offered?
So generational healing, if we dig deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into things that happen from a cyclical, systemic level, and if we get right down to the basic of it, what we're not consciously aware of, what most of us are not consciously aware of, is that our traumas are passing down through our DNA and our RNA up to 14 generations. So if I don't consciously, make an effort to eradicate the experience of slavery or the experience of trauma that someone within that 14-year lineage has experienced, I am unconsciously carrying that emotional experience in my DNA and RNA as a trait, just like my brown hair and brown eyes are a trait that I get from, my lineage. So what we don't realize is that we're also inheriting personality traits. We're also inheriting, trauma. We're also inheriting, let's say, with thought processes or or mental awareness, spiritual abilities, or thought processes overall. So those things carry down to the generation, just like the way that we do things, just like the way that we cook a meal is a generational trait, or whether or not we have a particular belief system can be a generational trait as well. So all of these things, when we look at from a totality, makes us who we are and has allowed us to arrive where we are today. Once we have the conscious knowledge that we have the ability to, let's say, embrace all of the beautiful qualities that we've received, such as, our skin color or things that are great to be proud of, or we can also take a look at the perspective of, I also have the opportunity to heal. I can also heal and recover my bloodline from the trauma that's been passed down due to slavery or colorism or oppression of any type. So that's what generational healing is.
Wow. And so I mean, what are some of the things that you might do? I mean, is this a talk therapy part of it? Is this also including Reiki? Is this including other kinds of physical or sensory interventions? How does that work?
It can include a few of the above. So it can have a combined modality experience. Typically, it is done through, my typical process is done through a consultative talk therapy, as well as the emotional release through Reiki. Sorry, my son is yelling in the background. It's distracting me. Sorry about that. But
That's okay.
also through the emotional process, or the emotional release of Reiki, or I could also do emotional freedom therapy, the tapping, to help release that as well.
Okay. So
It really kind of takes acknowledgement of it. So like if I have a great great grandmother who was a slave and was raped and bore someone into my bloodline as a result of that, we're still carrying that trauma. So it does in a lot of ways take the conscious recognition into consideration in that healing process as well.
Oh, so I imagine, of course, whereas we may not know the exact details, does a person then have to kind of just acknowledge the probability that some of these things are there, and to kind of, it starts with acknowledging that?
Yes, absolutely. So what I found typically happens when I receive clients that want to go through the generational healing process. Typically what they do is they'll pull like an ancestry DNA, something of that nature, and understand the true lineage of like where they come from. And once they can trace back the steps, they typically go on a journey through, well, what was there? What happened in this bloodline? What happened during that experience? So some people, I understand that my bloodline is a lineage of the Pan-African slave trade. I understand that my lineage is linked to the west coast of Africa. So my family probably has that experience somewhere. Let's address that. Or it could be, I know my great grandfather's story, and I understand what he went through. So let's address that. You know what I mean? So people usually have some sort of a tipping point in order to get them to get the knowledge or the resources of the history to understand more of what needs to be healed.
Okay, I see. So when folks come to you with that specific request for generational healing, there's always something to get it started, something that they do know already, either through their own research or through kind of family lore and history. They've already have some information, and maybe I'm guessing they would have either some inquiry about how it might be affecting their current life, but also just some ways that they want to kind of address that.
Right. And what I found so far, in association to this level of work is, let's say someone realizes that they have that cancer runs in their colon cancer runs in their family. So they want to understand where the link of that colon cancer comes from. And then they stumble across, oh, great great grandma had colon cancer. Well, let's see where great great grandma came from. You know what I mean? So it turns into kind of a trickle effect. And typically they end up rounding the circle, coming back to me saying, I figured it out, let's heal this.
Wow, wow. I would think though that definitely the concept of generational healing would definitely be of particular importance in the Black community. I mean, there is a collective feeling of being robbed of the knowledge of our ancestry by being brought as slaves. It's like the cord was snapped, and so we know that we have African ancestry, but we're trying to pull the pieces together to figure out where kind of the links are. And I've spoken about on this show before, even kind of going back to what we mentioned earlier with the ACE study, there's a lot of issues related to the Black community that have been erroneously just labeled as being race-based health problems that are just saying, oh, this is just more common in Black people, and not acknowledging the historical kind of factors and the fact that trauma can be passed down generationally. And there is scientific evidence to prove that, scientific studies that were done on Holocaust survivors that show trauma can be passed down through kind of encoded into our DNA. So there's evidence for that. I am amazed. You mentioned that it can be passed down through up to 14 generations, and that is remarkable. And so I think that's amazing work.
Yeah, thank you for that. I when I decided to offer it as a service, it was not initially on my menu. When I decided to offer it as a service, I stumbled across a couple of people that were saying, hey, I figured out XYZ. Would you be able to? And I did have the knowledge of the DNA and RNA traits, already. And it was something that I had already written about. And I said, you know what? Yeah. And let's offer this because my whole goal is for everyone to be empowered, for everyone to have the empowerment of who they are and to be able to fully stand confidently within their skin and be fully affirmed, to walk about life just having an understanding. These things didn't happen to me, they happened for me. You know what I mean? What did I learn in the process? And so generational healing, I think, is a phenomenal tool, and I do hope a lot more people seek that level of understanding and that level of eradication as well, because we've got future generations, that will have the ability to live a freer life as a result of not carrying the things that have been done systemically to us as a culture.
Yeah, and it's interesting because and even on a certain kind of time span, people will sometimes talk about generational traits in their family, like alcoholism, or I've heard people talking about fatherlessness, that they've kind of had a lineage of fathers leaving, and like one person saying, I'm not going to be that person that leaves. I'm going to stay with my family. And it's, kind of that idea of even that issue of like breaking a kind of a generational trait, that negative trait. Is that something that comes into play with generational healing as well? Things like that maybe someone notices, oh my gosh, every, X person in my family tends to struggle with suicidality or something like that. That's something that just happens in their family. They kind of come to you and say, you know what, I don't know what's going on, but I notice it's happening generation to generation. Let's talk about it.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So listeners, check her out, her website, Day 7 Wellness Center, Generational Healing. And if you guys are just joining, you're listening to Black Mental Health Matters. I'm Dr. Drkerryann Williams. I'm a psychiatrist here in Massachusetts. And my guest today is Dr. Portia Lee. She's a certified holistic health practitioner and naturopath. We're talking about her holistic practice, Day 7 Wellness Center, and all the various things that she is certified to help people with. Her center offers a lot of services, and also recently is offering doula services with her colleague. If you guys have a question or a comment, you can give us a call at 617-238-7111. That's 617-238-7111. We're also streaming live on Facebook. So you can go to the Facebook page, heat981fm.com. That's heat981fm.com if you want to just watch the live stream, drop a comment. So let me check the Facebook feed. Facebook user Teresa says, good afternoon. This is excellent information. And Facebook user actress Latamara says, great information. Latanya says, I would like to ask if Dr. Lee is familiar with the New Start concept. The New Start concept. Are you familiar with that? Okay, no. I'm not familiar with that either. Maybe our Facebook user can share a little bit more about that. So the other thing I wanted to talk about was, you mentioned inner child healing. You said that was one of the things that you worked on your journey, inner child healing. And, I've met someone else who also specializes in inner child healing, and I never had a chance to really ask her much about what it was. So can you tell our listeners, what is inner child healing?
Yes. So first and foremost, I acknowledge that no one knows what you don't know until you do. So you don't know what you're missing until until an opportunity presents itself to fill the void. So inner child healing has to do with you having the ability to look at your trauma from third person perspective, much like cognitive behavioral therapy does, but it also allows you the opportunity to reparent or nurture your inner child through your either traumas or any of the emotions that might come up that we might experience through childhood. Bullying can be one, but to just reparent yourself in the way that you may have needed in that moment. It offers you an opportunity to offer your inner child compassion. My personal inner child journey had to do with me reclaiming my power due to a molestation that took place in my life. So I needed to get in and fully understand what I had stuffed as a result of that experience, and how that experience made me act out emotionally, and really allowed me to nurture myself through the process. I myself, like so many other women that have either a rape or molestation experience, stuff it and don't talk about it. And so I allowed myself during the inner child healing the opportunity to nurture myself, to comfort myself, to provide myself with safety, to provide myself with, some sort of a stability that I needed as a result of not being vocal or verbal as a result of my experiences.
Wow. And so is this kind of through like talking, like a kind of a talk therapy process?
Yes. So what I do personally is what I call take my clients on a journey, and we'll journey through the experience. There are practitioners, and through that experience, I encourage my clients to create a safe space, and walk them through the process of understanding what their trauma or PTSD did for them. From a conscious perspective, what did it teach you? What can you take away from this perspective, and what can we let go and leave here? There are some practitioners that practice the process, and I'm sure you're familiar with this, EMDR, which I think is absolutely a phenomenal experience. I am not credentialed to perform EMDR, although maybe one day I will look into it. But I think that the process overall is a phenomenal experience when linked to inner child healing.
Now, Marv is saying that we have a caller on the line. So Marv, can you put the caller through, please?
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi.
Can you hear me? Hi, how you doing?
Hi.
I am Latamra, actress Latamra. You said my name. But I have a question. I am currently on a journey, such as you speak, and I have gotten to a point in my journey where I felt a breakthrough, or have felt freedom in my journey. Something may have happened, say 20 years later, and then I feel like I'm back in that place again of fear and not knowing my direction anymore because something else had happened in my life or in my journey. Do you understand what I mean?
Yes. Yes. Is your question what to do once you get there, or why that happens?
And you get there and then you lose your way. So what I'm asking, or what I'm trying to understand is, when you do the work and you get there are things that happen in your life that bring you back to that place. And sometimes it may take 12 years or 10 years to get back to that place that you know. Do you know what I mean? So in that process, is it that you have to wait in that process because you know what to do? But in that process, it's like you're not able to move to do those things. So then you question yourself, am I supposed to just feel what's happening? And
I see.
Move through the work. You know what I'm saying?
I like your question. And that is actually something, that is actually a question that happens a lot. It's an extraordinarily common question. And I do believe that we are to occasionally revisit places that we've been because it is serving us in some way. So that's one of the ways that I look at it. Now, if we are, let's say if we're thrown into a space of, you mentioned fear, so I'll harp on that. Let's say if we are in a space of fear, but we are addressing a space of fear based on a trigger then that is something that's, in my opinion, us alarming ourselves that there's a layer of this experience that has not necessarily been healed. But I do believe that we, throughout our life journey, while we're here having the human experience, I do believe that there are cycles that we might go through, and we might revisit a feeling of fear or apprehension or depression or joy or, bliss in any given moment, because we need to recognize what we need to be able to associate what we're feeling in that moment to our overall well-being. So there's a few different ways that we could look at that. And if you're, I do find that having an accountability partner is a great thing. That accountability partner could be someone like myself. It could be someone like drkerryann. It could be, your best friend. It could be your sibling, but just someone to say, hey, I've noticed that you feel or are experiencing a little bit of XYZ, which is understandable. Let's remember our resources, or put more, acquire new knowledge or new tools and resources to put into your skill belt to help you get to be your whole and complete highest and best self.
Oh, wow. And so it looks as though then in that situation, someone can be free, and then they can potentially have an experience that leads them to have some kind of negative experience again, some negative feelings again. They go back in and kind of address that a second time, and I guess explore the reasons why it happened again, and that, kind of the whole picture. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Right, and I thank you for that. And in my experience, what I've noticed is that when you're going through those healing, and you move yourself from the people who are causing you to feel sad or don't support, like you said, you need an accountability partner. Someone to coach you or keep or push you when you're falling short. But what I notice sometimes is that when you're on that journey, you'll find that there are people that will they will kind of challenge you. When you're on that walk, you get challenged.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. I agree. So me from my perspective, most of the things that I do are based on energy. So if the energy associated, so if you are going through your healing journey, and let's say you've already got an accountability partner, you're seeing someone like drkerryann, or you're coming to see someone like myself, and you're vibing high and you're feeling really good and life is great, and you're able to see and recognize on a regular basis all of the beauty that surrounds us. And then someone comes and tries to chop you off at the knees. That happens, right? And maybe that behavior was very similar to what set you on the path to a high vibrational experience anyhow. That person serves as a reminder of a couple of things. One, the experience, and one, that not everybody is able to continue on your journey with you. And it is okay, in my opinion, to let people go. And I mean, to do it gently and with love, but to offer people space to go through their own journey of wholeness and wellness as you continue to pursue yours. I do strongly and firmly believe that. Now, some of those people are more difficult to let go of than others. But when we think about it, who nobody deserves to have relationships or associative experiences that are uncomfortable, or that cause you a moment of cognitive dissonance, or any of those reactions that you might have to being triggered in that way. I do think that it's okay to recognize them for what they've shown you, because there's a lesson in everything. So if I stumble across a coworker that bullies me and it takes me back to second grade to me being bullied, I'm going to offer my inner child some compassion, but also recognize, okay, I've got a little bit more work to do about my experience in that area.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank the caller for calling in, and we're running short on time, so I'm going to go ahead and start the wrap up. Dr. Portia, how can people find you on the internet?
www.day7wellnesscenter.com, or day7wellness@gmail.com.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I feel like I learned a lot, and I appreciate your philosophy. You know, I hope to have you on the show again in the future. If you're willing to come back on. So, and for our listeners out there, thank you so much for listening to Black Mental Health Matters. I'll be on again next week on Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on heat981fm.com or 98.1 FM, the Urban Heat. So I'll talk with you next week. Bye.
Thank you.